Hello and welcome to Connotation Points video Snark. I'm currently reading through The Betrothed by Kiera Cass. This is not the first video of this book, so I'd recommend that you watch the other videos before you start this. Links are posted below. Chapter 13. So Hollis goes for her midnight walk, and because it's a palace that's full of people, there are servants still up and about doing various things, so it's not like she's alone or anything. She gets to the Great Hall and, well, would you look at that? Guess who predicted this highly predictable story? Silas is there. Of course he was here. In the moment when I was wondering if it would be worth abandoning my king, I ran into someone who'd done something similar to his, and who could say which of us was a better criminal? You want to know what would have been great? If the narration had given literally any indication that Hollis was getting cold feet over the entire thing, before it just kind of blurted it out without any sort of build-up or anything. Silas says that he and Sullivan just finished making the pieces for their former king. Hollis apologizes and says that she completely and utterly forgot what day it was. My mother said you were quite a willing student today. For the literal 5 minutes that you were together. Hollis mentions that she might need Lady Eastoff to come to her again later in the morning, but she says that she's been moved, and then she tells Silas everything that's been happening to her. The sudden urge to regurgitate her problems gives Hollis pause. She doesn't know Silas and wonders why she's so eager to tell him, but then she decides the entire in for a penny and for a pound and keeps on talking. However, that doesn't last long, and she changes the topic before she can actually express how she's really feeling. She asks Silas how he's settling in. He says that things are different, but in a good way, and he goes on to say that he hopes that following the visit from his former king, he hopes that he never has to see King Quentin ever again. Hollison spends an entire paragraph thinking about Silas's hair and how a piece of it escapes from his ponytail. I wish that I was joking, but here we are. Silas promises that he'll pass along Hollis's message of needing more help to his mother, but that Scarlet will be needed to help him and Sullivan finish whatever they'd been working on for their former king. He then bids her good night and leaves her alone in the Great Hall. Hollis stays for a moment and thinks. She contemplates going to Jameson then and there and telling him that she can't handle all of this, but the one thing that gives her pause is her feelings for Jameson. She's apparently willing to suffer a great deal just to be with him. Plus, she kind of wants to rub in her newfound position into everybody's face, and the fact that she's suddenly got independence from her parents. It's mainly those last two thoughts that give her the push she needs to understand that everything is somehow going to be okay. Chapter 14. The next morning, servants bring in Hollis's things. Among them is the necklace Hall had picked out earlier. That was made for Queen Allbraid herself, Hollis. That was made for a warrior. So in the early chapters, Hollis name-dropped a bunch of queens and said all of this stuff about them. I said at the time that all of this information was pointless since it lacked any actual context. However, 14 chapters later, and it's like, yeah, I still don't care about these queens. But then they're talking about the warrior necklace, and it's like, okay, how is a necklace for a warrior? I smiled, thinking I could use something made for going into war. Part of me is like, yeah, politics are awful and terrible, and Jameson seems to literally be throwing Hollis into that particular pack of starving wolves. But most of me is like, this book keeps whining about all of these problems, and they end up not even being an issue at all. Shut up. Going to war? So pretentious. Before Hollis can put it on, another servant comes in with the matching crown that Jameson offered up. Delia and Nora scramble to get Hollis ready. Nora says that the jewelry is heavy and doesn't know how Hollis is going to be able to handle it. Hollis agrees, but she also knows that she can't take off either until the day is over. I sat at my vanity, looking at myself. I'd never felt so beautiful. I wasn't sure if I looked like myself, but I couldn't deny that I looked like royalty. Literally the only thing they described adding to Hollis was putting on the necklace and crown. If adding accessories to the outfit made her look like a different person, I'm almost afraid to ask how ordinary Hollis was before. Before they leave the room, Hollis makes Delia and Nora promise to stop her from doing anything stupid, which yep, that checks out actually. They walk down the hall, and the book makes it seem like it's the most exciting moment of pomp and circumstance that you'll ever see in your entire life. The entire Eastoff family is standing in there, and they're acting like Hollis is their own child with how proud of her that they are. Although, considering how Hollis's own parents haven't been mentioned, and considering how they've barely had one kind word to say about their only child in 14 chapters, I'll take Hollis being adopted by the Eastoff family. Jameson is taken by Hollis's beauty, but yawn. Nothing to see here, move along. The band strikes up a tune as Quentin and his party get closer to the throne room. But that didn't matter, as I felt I knew him now. He was everything Lady Eastoff had told me. Ah yes, the 5-minute conversation that Hollis had with her before getting endlessly distracted telling the readers things that the book should have already told us about. I'm sure that conversation is going to come in handy. So the visiting royals come in. Quentin is old and clearly needs a cane to help him get along. But the thing that gives Hollis pause about him is that his eyes make him seem evil. Valentina is around Hollis's age, and it's obvious that she's in the early stages of pregnancy. And finally, the only prince, who is described as being insanely sickly. Corona might have been a much smaller country than Isolate, but our king was far greater. There has literally been nothing said about Jameson to indicate that he's actually a good ruler or not, and just because Quentin looks evil doesn't mean that he's a terrible king. Jameson greets Quentin and the two parties start to intermingle. They sit down together and Hollis returns to Valentina to try and make small talk. She asks where Valentina is from in Isolate, but Valentina, she's rude to say the least. She says that they need to have a proper introduction, even though Jameson introduced Hollis to the visiting party earlier. She then says that Hollis has only ever been in the area where she was born in, but in a way that implies, "You're an inbred hillbilly hick. You're beneath me." And I simultaneously want to applaud Valentina for saying what we're all thinking, but I also kind of want to smack her upside the head and tell her to mind her manners. Hollis then tries to ask Valentina if she'd like a tour of the palace later to be shown all of the architecture and art. Valentina is quick to dismiss Hollis, stating that she needs her rest, and then that's the end of that conversation. Hollis is upset because half of her job is to entertain Valentina. She gets up and rushes over to where the Eastoff family is. They've been reunited with their friends and family from Isolate, so they're a little distracted. Hollis asks Scarlet for her help. Scarlet is like, "Oh, but I hear that she's like that with everybody," and quickly introduces Hollis to her aunt and uncle, because priorities. One of them mentioned that there's to be a joust later. Hollis can't help but sarcastically comment to the bunch of people from Isolate that everything Isolate does is copied from Corona. As you might expect, these people take it very well and go on to be sarcastic and rude toward Hollis in turn. Some of the others scold the one being rude, but Hollis, as dense as she is, doesn't even understand when people are making fun of her. You cannot offend anyone." He motioned to my headpiece, which was still making light dance every time I took a step. "You are an ornament." Well, somebody had to say it. Hollis is nothing but pretty arm candy for a himbo king. The boy motions towards Valentina and says that she's nothing but an empty vessel. Why do I get the feeling that there's a lot of misogyny in this comment? If you don't know what's happening along your own border, what's happening to your own people, I can only conclude that you, my lady, are exactly the same decoration for your king. Stop it! You've already murdered her! I don't know who this guy is, but he's my new favorite character. I hope he follows Hollis along and says rude things about her for the rest of the series. Hollis doesn't know what to say, probably because she's as empty-headed as Eden just said she is, so she does the only thing she knows how to do, which is to insult these people simply because they're from Isolate. She then storms off and keeps telling herself not to cry. And I'm still not quite sure what kind of story that this book wants to be. 14 chapters in and it's still floundering to give us an actual plot that sticks around for more than a single chapter. However, I'd be perfectly alright if the remaining chapters were nothing but Hollis being torn to shreds, and then she is forced to watch as Jameson enters into a political marriage to save the crumbling Corona kingdom. You know, because Jameson is an awful king despite what Hollis thinks. Thanks for listening to our book Snark on YouTube. New videos are up every Monday. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so that you don't miss anything. Also, while you're waiting for the new video next week, be sure to catch up on my other video series. If you're already caught up with that, then you can head over to Tumblr for my main book Snarks, always free and updated daily. People who support me on Patreon also have early access to my daily snack, but also bonus snack that isn't up anywhere else. People who donate to me either by supporting me on Patreon or by making a one-time donation via PayPal or Ko-fi also get shoutouts in my videos. Thank you so much to Don and Phoebe for supporting me already. Be sure to join my Patreon or donate to hear your name next week. Also, if you want to read some of the stuff that I've published, and you can purchase my works on Amazon, I have 19 erotic short stories, 1 short story collection, 1 full-length novel. Links for everything will be posted below. See you next week, guys!